Welcome back, Mando.
Oh, greetings, Bucketheads. Mevar Tagar. Welcome to our 302nd B-Wing blockade blasting episode of Mando Vision. I'm your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. We're so glad you're here. Make sure you're hitting us up on the socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram, Mando Vision at Blue Sky. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com, and please make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Alright, Bucketheads, we are back to continue our Star Wars Rebels rewatch, and we're going to what I think is a very nice episode, introducing us to a classic piece of Star Wars lore, a familiar vessel introduced in 1983's Return of the Jedi. I am, of course, referring to the B-Wing, which made its triumphant return in the season finale of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, blasting away the pirate ship. And it was spectacular, getting to see the composite laser beam come to life. This is the episode where we saw it in animation form. Of course, never getting to see that take place in Return of the Jedi. It just wasn't a thing. But I also think there was a bit of the B-Wing was used incorrectly in Return of the Jedi, I think. Not so good in the dogfight. I think that, but the Rebels had a plan. And they didn't know they were walking into a trap. But, again, Rebels had a plan. B-Wing maybe would have been a bit more effective in that plan. But you know what Mike Tyson says about a plan? Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the frickin' mouth. And that's what happens when the Rebels arrive to take on the second Death Star. But I'm getting a little off topic here. Let's get back on track. Let's get back into the B-Wing, because this episode has got all kinds of juicy little Easter eggs and pieces of Star Wars history and canon in it, and but a lot of good Star Wars stuff. Specifically, we're talking about Shipmaster Quarry, right? Named after the great Ralph McQuarrie, who did all the concept art and helped bring the visual aspect of Star Wars to life for George Lucas. There's also his Astro Droid is BG-81, named for Bill George, the original designer of the B-Wing for Return of the Jedi. Lots of good stuff here. The planet that they go to, Shantipole, it is also the name of the project for the B-Wing in the episode, Project Shantipole. Well, guess what? That's an Easter egg back to the old West End games from '89, the old role-playing game with Strike Force Shantipole, where it's revealed that another Mon Calamari, not Shipmaster Quarry, but in fact one Admiral Gail Akbar, Admiral Akbar himself, was involved in the design of the B-Wing, a heavy assault ship for the Rebel Alliance. And it was Akbar, with the help of the Verpine, to bring the original B-Wing back to life in the old canon, with the I think it's Slane and Carpel. I don't know how the Verpine pronounce their names, but a Verpine shipbuilding firm took on the B-Wing design in the old canon. And checking my Wikipedia today, that says that's who is the secret builder of the B-Wing in the new canon as well. So kind of a cool little thing in place. I don't think we've seen the Verpine in anything other than comics and novels. I'm trying to remember if we've met one yet, if we meet one later in Rebels, and I don't recall. But I guess that's why we're doing the rewatch, right? So we can all kind of re-examine and re-explore and reconnect with the show. Now that we're like about 10 years out from when it originally debuted. So yeah, some really fun stuff in this episode. Old canon comes into play. And, they play a lot of homages, a lot of odes to the old canon, but also reinterpreted in a new way for the new canon. And again, the B-Wing gets a new name in this episode. Also, it's referred to by Shipmaster Quarry as the Blade Wing. So there's what the B stands for. Because again, it doesn't really look like the letter B, does it? Not so much. But yeah, it's a powerful ship. Ion cannons, heavy laser cannons, twin auto blasters, proton torpedoes, and of course the composite laser beam. Designed in the episode as a blockade buster. And yeah, it's cool. I love the gyroscopic element of the ship. I think the B-Wing's a super fun design. I think it's a super fun element for the ships of Star Wars. Is very, very different in the way it works, the way it is visually conceived from the A-Wing, the X-Wings, all the other ships, the Z-95 Headhunters, all the good stuff. Love me a good B-Wing. So it's fun to get to see an episode that introduces it in a fun way, and we get to sort of explore it in ways that we hadn't prior to this. You know, I think if memory serves, there was some B-Wing stuff in, it was either Stackpole's or Aaron Alston's X-Wing books, and possibly even the comic series that Stackpole was involved in through Dark Horse. Not too much, like just, you know, they weren't part of Rogue Squadron, but again, they had those toys to play with, and I believe Stackpole and Aaron Alston both took turns doing at least including the B-Wings in the fun. If memory serves. But I am planning to revisit those books in the near future. So I'll let you know if I get that wrong. I definitely will. But yeah, it's a solid episode introducing the B-Wing, but it's also a great Hera episode. And that's really what it's all about in this one. Kanan and Ezra sort of take a back seat this week, and we get to focus on Hera and why she is a pilot, why she is a great pilot, and her role in the expanding Phoenix Rebel Cell, and yeah, it's a really enjoyable episode. It's really straightforward, really a lot of fun, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to get into it, but first, let's go ahead and get those episode particulars out of the way. This is Star Wars Rebels Season 2, Episode 7, Wings of the Master. Original air date, 11/11/2015. November 11th, 2015, friends. Written by Stephen Melching, directed by Dave Filoni and Sergio Paez. Our primary cast for this week's episode: Tyler Gray as Ezra Bridger, Vanessa Marshall as Hera Syndulla, Freddie Prinze Jr., Kanan Jarrus, Tir Sakar, Sabine Wren, Steve Blum as Zeb Orielos, Dave Filoni's Chopper, David Oluwelo is Agent Callus, Keone Young as Commander Sato, D. Bradley Baker as Rex, and Corey Burton returns as Quarry, and several other characters, but mostly as Quarry. I just like saying it that way. The plot for this episode: Hera goes on a dangerous mission to acquire a new ship, the B-Wing. All right, we're going to get into it. You know what that means. It is time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off.
You're going to have to relocate the covert.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Our episode opens with Rebels, a Phoenix cell, coming out of hyperspace, attempting to get supplies to the planet Ibar. And maybe you're wondering, why is the Empire blockading Ibar? It's a good question. The Empire blockaded the planet to prevent supplies from reaching a growing rebel network on the planet. This is to force them to submit to Imperial rule. Ibar was suspected of harboring a significant underground resistance, and that is something that the Empire is very actively trying to squash. Now, the blockade also has a double purpose, because they very strongly believe it will also lure other rebels to attempt to get supplies to them, right? So they're going to lure out Phoenix Squadron, right? And it's a reasonable plan. Now, unfortunately, like as is the case with a lot of Star Wars that we see on TV and in film, they think very two-dimensionally. This is one of my issues that I had. And again, it's a quibble. It's not even an issue. It wasn't something I was like, oh, rolling my eyes at when they do it in Episode 1. But it's just that Star Wars has a very two-dimensional way of thinking about space combat, and the way they're talking about blockading this planet. Just like in Episode 1, in the blockade of Naboo. It's very flat, right? It's a flat surface. You come out of hyperspace at one point, and there's a blockade, and that's that. Not like you can't exit hyperspace at other parts of the system or ways to get around it, or go up and over, right? Like again, it's not they're not thinking three-dimensionally. It's all just very level. It's a very level surface. So again, and they've tried to advance our understanding of hyperspace routes, and maybe you do only enter the system one way, but doesn't seem. I don't know. It's one of my, again, it's a quibble. But yeah, if you're gonna blockade a planet, you need to have it's a sphere. You gotta have ships all around it to blockade it. But again, a minor point. But it's something worth noting. They did it in episode 1. The Empire continues with this belief that 5 ships, that'll blockade a whole planet. That'll do the trick. I would imagine a real blockade of a planet would require significantly more ships. But again, it is what it is. It's here to lure out the rebels and to squash the rebels that are already on the planet. And of course, Callus is on board. Of course, Callus is calling the shots and taking delight in the fact that the rebels on the planet are suffering, and he's about to blow some rebels out of the space lanes. So Hera presses the attack, desperate to get those supplies to the people of Ibar, and they are met with staunch resistance. The Empire blows them to bits. They're no match. These rebels they don't have the firepower to break an Imperial blockade at this point. And so as they retreat after losing one of the transport ships, losing an A-wing, again, Hera's pressing too. It's interesting the way she sort of presses this idea that she can get through despite the overwhelming losses that are occurring around her. It was very interesting. It made me think of Hera as a leader a little differently here, because she is so desperate to achieve the goal to get victory, to run the supplies and break this blockade, that many people died in the process. It wasn't the world's most effective strategy on her part, just to try and simply overpower an already more powerful enemy. Not the best strategy in my humble opinion. But they pull back. They realize that, hey, things aren't going so well, but we got to get these supplies to these people, right? We have to figure out how to do it. How are we going to do it? Well, Rex has been talking to a shipmaster who might just have a ship capable of breaking a blockade. The only problem is he doesn't want to make a deal over the comms or anything like that. You have to go meet him face to face on the planet Shantapol, which has a reputation of being a planet that's a one-way ticket. Ships go in, they don't come out. And we find out that it's a lot of that has to do with the electrical storms that are around the planet, so that when you enter the atmosphere, you usually take a lightning strike and your ship now has no power. And it's a planet of very steep mountains isn't the word I want to use, but there's just like beams of rock that come right up out of the ground. And this is the planet. We don't even know what the surface looks like. It's just columns of rock jutting into the sky. And that's where Quarry has his ship construction yard with the help of BG-81, excuse me. I'm getting a little ahead of myself because as our team separates, Ezra and Kanan go off. They're going to take the Ghost. They're going to get some more supplies for the people. But they're barely in the episode, other than announcing that they can't wait for Hera any longer, and they're going to have to try and run the blockade without her, which is what she was worried about when Kanan volunteers her for this mission. And I do like the fact that Kanan volunteers her for this mission. I think Hera underestimates her own abilities sometimes, and I think Kanan recognizes that. So he's going to recommend that Hera goes because he knows that Hera's the best pilot that Phoenix Squadron has. And I really like that. I like that what that says about Kanan and his understanding of who Hera is, that she is humble in the regards that she would never think of herself as the best, but he knows better than her in this, because knows better is maybe not the right word, but knows that Hera's not going to claim to be the best. He knows that she's going to stay humble and think these other pilots are maybe her better, even though the truth is not that. And I think Kanan's hoping that Hera will begin to realize that and admit that, maybe in a more public fashion. But yeah, it's really neat in that regards, the way he is kind of helping to boost her up so that she can take that title and claim it for herself. Did really enjoy that aspect of it. So yeah, we get to Shantipole again for reasons I don't quite understand. Zeb's there, Sabine's there. The three of them had to go for this negotiation, I guess, but it is what it is. It gives them all something to do. Mostly just watch Hera interact with Shipmaster Quarry. Mon Calamari, shorter of stature than Admiral Akbar by quite a bit. Zeb calls him a carp at one point, which I thought was amusing. And he's a shipmaster who's afraid to fly. Doesn't want to fly. He just likes building ships and designing ships, but has no interest in actually going in testing them himself. So that's why he tries to bring pilots to him, and he believes his craft is worthy of the best pilots, and he's not just going to give it over to anyone. So again, it took tremendous skill on Hera's part to get to Shantipole, to land safely on that scrapyard / landing pad, and she thinks she's just going to get the ship because she shows up, but it's a weapon of war, and I think Quarry wants to know, why should he just give it over to anyone? He doesn't want the Empire to have it, but he's not just going to turn it over to some combat pilot, as he sort of describes it in a derogatory fashion. He wants to know that it's a pilot. Like, yes, there's a war going on around them, and yes, combat is sort of the end result of what he's creating, but he wants to know that it's not just a person simply out there to kill, to destroy, but a person who loves the art of flying, who loves aerial maneuvers and things of that nature. And there's no other person who can better describe her passion for it than Hera. So I'm going to let Hera do the talking right now. All right, here we go. We don't do clips that often anymore.
Why would I hand over my ship to just any pilot?
Would any pilot risk their life to come to this death trap?
Perhaps not. So why did you?
I was a little girl when the Clone War came to Ryloth. My mother hid us below ground, but I'd peek out when the Republic ships flew over, as they fought to liberate my world. I dreamt of nothing more than to be up there with them.
So you left your family to fight?
I left my family so I could fly.
As a combat pilot?
If we want freedom, we must make difficult choices. I chose to leave my family. I chose to learn to fly. And then I chose to use that ability to help others in need. It's all rooted in something I can't explain. A need to be up there. Because even when there are explosions all around me and things are at their worst, I feel like I'm at my best.
And so with that being said, Quarry turns the keys over, and it's time for the test flight of the B-Wing. But will it work? B-Wing, aka the Blade Wing at this point. But will the ship work? Quarry says just enough to make it seem like maybe it won't, and that Hera may not be coming back. To which Zeb and Sabine, not so big a fan of that. So we get to see the B-Wing in action. We get to see it navigating through the canyons, and a small weapons test. And then when Tara's like, hey, I thought this ship was going to have a little bit more punch to it. That's when we find out about the composite laser beam and the amount of destruction it can do. But there's a side effect here, because when she brings the ship back, we find out it's using that knocks the hyperdrive offline. And again, Quarry says, well, it's a prototype. What'd you expect? And so they go to work trying to figure things out. Sabine wants to help the ship get a little bit more powerful. Quarry's a little reluctant, but as she says, you don't get between a weapons package and a Mandalorian. And so they work out the fact that, well, when the Ghost landed on the planet, there was some damage done. Quarry helped him with some new parts and gave him the last hyperdrive. So essentially the Ghost is going to tow the B-Wing to the blockade. Now we do get a message from Kanan that, hey, we can't wait for any longer, so we're going. And Hera knows at this point that it's basically a suicide run without the B-Wing and its composite laser to cripple the Imperial cruisers. So, using the Ghost to tow the B-Wing, they launch from the planet into orbit and take off to get to the blockade before the rebels meet an untimely demise and aid the people of Ibar in the process. And so we get to see Hera take the B-Wing into action and completely surprise the Imperials with the firepower that she's able to pack on that ship. and the way they're able to dispatch an Imperial cruiser and run the blockade to get supplies to the people of Ibar. And then, hey, Hera gets promoted and is captain of Phoenix Squadron because she's an awesome pilot. And as Sato says, they can learn a lot from you. So, hey, time to be the leader. Time to step up. Mom's taking charge now, people. Hera's got the wings. She's the wing commander. See what I did there with the wing commander? Mark Hamill, Freddie Prinze Jr. That's the whole thing. Anyways, I think it's a really solid episode. A big fan of this one. Enjoyed it quite a bit. Got to see some fun stuff with the B-Wing, a ship that I don't think gets the credit it deserves. It doesn't get the attention, the love it deserves. But it's a good, fun starship. Again, big fan of that gyroscopic capacity with it, with the way the body of the ship rotates around the central cockpit area. Well, not central, but the main cockpit area. Very, very cool. So I love seeing that story kind of come to life. I love seeing the odes to McQuarrie and to Bill George, even sort of acknowledging Akbar's role by having Master Query be Amon Calamari. Really, really good stuff. I think the episode is really enjoyable, a lot of fun. It's very straightforward, not a lot of complexity to anything. I'm leaning like 7.5 buckets on it. It's very, very enjoyable. It could be an 8, honestly. You know what? Let's just make it 8 buckets. Let's make it 8 buckets. We're going to round up. Solid episode. Very enjoyable. Check it out. Good stuff. All right. And with that being said, Bucketheads, I think we're going to wrap this party up. So again, make sure you're following us on the socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter/X and Insta. MandoVision at Blue Sky. And you can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If you have the time and the inclination, 5-star reviews, so helpful, as so many more podcasts exist in the world from even 5 minutes ago when we started this one. There's 3,000 new ones have debuted in the 5 minutes since we started this show. At least that's how it feels. So yeah, the 5-star reviews, very, very helpful, my friends. Thank you so much. And thank you for the head shake there, Mr. Chili. Good job. The people heard. And with that, we're going to wrap up, get out of here. We'll be back with another episode of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch. And hey, if Star Wars news breaks, we'll be there to talk about that too. The countdown to Andor is on, and we couldn't be more excited. All right, Bucketheads, we'll be back next week. Go out there, be great Star Wars fans, kind, supportive, and encouraging of others. And even if they have crazy ideas about the B-Wing and how the B-Wing is not that good, we nod our heads and say, you know what? That's your opinion, man, and I respect it. I don't agree with it, but I respect it. And that's it, buds. I don't know. Let's get out of here. We'll talk next week. But remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Admiral, we have enemy ships in Sector 47.
It's a trap!